in 1976 by a group of brothers who knew that there was something missing in their lives, and that was a sense of self and identity. So these brothers got together, formed this organization, and when I went on my sabbatical, went to prison, to meet these brothers, I was introduced to self, so to speak. And since I've been introduced to the Harambe African Cultural Organization, it has been life-changing for me. It allowed me to see that my problems are my brothers and sisters' problems. That we as a people, if we unite, can be very powerful and prosperous. So, for all the hurt and the pain that I've caused in my life to go to a place like that, I made it a vow to be the solution to the problem, to be in service of the people. So this organization's motto is the transformation of African males and females to African men and women, because we see from our condition here in the West that it's much needed. And keep in mind that it's also geared to put that African family system back together. So in doing so, we come down here, as I mentioned, we're the Lincoln chapter of Harambe. We come down here to Omaha to network with brothers and sisters and to let everybody know that we're here. And we're here to give a place where we can come as a people and find out who we are and what our issues are and how we're going to solve those issues. Because we're not all about complaining, believe it or not. We're actually about finding out what the issues are and finding solutions to our problems and implementing them. So with that being said, I just want to introduce who we are and to let everybody know that we meet at the Malone Community Center, the Clyde Malone Community Center in Lincoln, Nebraska, every Sunday from 2 to 4. And you can find that address, anybody got it by hand? 2032 U Street, Lincoln, Nebraska. So come check us out. So at this time, we're going to have the rest of our board members introduce themselves and their position. So I'll start here on my left and have my wife introduce herself and what she does on the board.
I am Dion Dean. I'm the co-way, the secretary.
Bob?
My name is Suburban. I'm a government in Solomon, Jerry. I'm the SO Alakari Austin. I will read the program for you today, and I want to thank everybody for coming.
Stop.
My name is Ursa Mahadi Rob. My government name is Mike Stelly. I am the Lotu Echo, the educational chairman, and I am happy to be a part of this movement.
My name is Carletta Lewis. I am the Akay, and thank you for having me.
I am Sean Miller, and I am the capo, the treasurer.
I'm Brother Nyame, and I am the Leto, which is administrative chairperson.
Was this from the long one? To be honest with you, I've only been in contact with Black Artists for the last 8 years. Hasn't been a long time, but once you begin to get into the literature and the text, it'll help you understand how important it is for us to celebrate us, especially when you learn of the knowledge of American holidays. So it's important for us to do us. That's why this was put together, and that's why we're here today. So with that, I will read Black August is a month-long observation dedicated to honoring and commemorating the lives and deaths of several fallen freedom fighters, political prisoners fighting for the liberation of Black Africans, new Africans affected by the centuries-old Holocaust in the Americas and worldwide. to bring unity among Black, African, new African prisoners, and education and awareness to family members, friends, associates, communities about the conditions of our sisters and brothers held within the concentration camps and gulags, prisons. To educate our people about and honor the history and actions of continued resistance of Black, new African peoples to oppression, colonization, and slavery in the U.S. and throughout the sport, with a particular emphasis on the prisoners, political prisoners, freedom fighters, and their historic acts of resistance. The first Black August was organized in California concentration camps, prisons in 1979, honoring freedom fighters, among whom were Jonathan Jackson, George Jackson, W.L. Nolan, James McClain, William Christmas, and Katari Gordon. We thank you for joining the Harambe African Cultural Organization in honoring and commemorating the lives and deaths of our sisters and brothers in Nebraska's concentration camps and gulags and worldwide. Thank you.
Before we go into the presentations that we have on the personages, I want to say a little something about Brother Mundo. If you can pan that camera over there to his picture over above his library, we have his actual library that he had while he was alive. Him and Brother Ed Poindexter are a couple brothers, along with some more, who are the founders of the Harambe African Cultural Organization. Brother Mundo was a Black Panther back in the 60s and 70s down here in Omaha. And for those who don't know, the Black Panthers get a bad rap as far as being terrorists. And it's ironic how when a people stand up for themselves, for the safety of themselves, for food for their children's bellies, this is viewed as something that's wrong or abnormal because it had come from Mr. Bobo, as Mbasa would say. When I met Brother Mundo in prison, I was unconscious, of course, and eventually I began to learn from the brother. Brother Biko Shahid Hamza, he told me about all the work Mundo did while he was out here on the street and how his case went down. But talking and walking with Brother Mundo, I saw he was somewhere else in his life that I hadn't seen in any person over here in the States in my life. He was home, so to speak. He had Africanized himself mentally and spiritually. And Brother Mundo's work in those institutions have uplifted a lot of brothers' lives, as you can see a couple brothers here today, to prove what he has done is working and will work. So I want to recognize that elder here today and give big props to him for all the work he put in for us. And I say I hope that his spirit and soul may rest in ancestral lands. So at this time, we're going to have board members do some presentations of some fallen brothers and sisters and some who are still putting in some work for the liberation of our people. So is there anybody who would like to go ahead and do theirs right now? We ain't got no order or nothing. All right, we'll have Brother Ursa Rob come up. Y'all give it up for Brother Ursa Rob.
Asante.
Sikiti.
I would like to thank Kasem Hedrick for introducing my presentation. But it's all good. My presentation is on Brother Mondo. Like you said, Mondo was a Black Panther in the 1970s. And there was a program devised against the Black Panthers that a lot of people didn't know existed until now. Was a program called COINTELPRO, and it was established by the government to undermine people who they felt were a threat to American politics and society as a whole. And the Black Panthers was targeted along with several other African American organizations at the time. And it is believed that Mondo and Brother Poindexter became victims of COINTELPRO. In 1970, they were accused of putting a bomb in an empty house and coercing police officers to go to the house and then exploding the bomb. Talking and meeting with Mondo, I can pretty much say with a surety, I don't believe that he did it, him nor Poindexter, and I believe that it may have been someone in the government that may have set this whole thing up to undermine the Black Panthers here in Omaha, Nebraska. But at any rate, the brother did 45 years incarcerated in prison, and he was there for 19 when I got there. And I ended up doing 26 years with him. And he changed my life. I can honestly say that Mondo was a man that was very determined. He didn't let his circumstances change him. He took his circumstances and looked around and tried to take as much advantage of where he was at than anyone I ever known in my life. He wrote a book of poetry called The Panther is a Black Cat. I had the joy of watching him put it together and him reciting some of the poems that he wanted in the book and asking my opinions on which ones and what order and things of that nature. And that made me feel very good about just knowing him as a person. I am so glad that we started Harambe here in Lincoln, because I know he's looking down and says, about time. And when I say about time, I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just meaning it in the sense that he can look down and see a success. He can see a success. He can see a win. He gave us what we needed. We were his children. A lot of people don't recognize that. We were his sons. And he taught us well. And he left a legacy. And he made sure he left it. The ancestor said, whatever you feel is important, write it down and make it into a book. Write a book. Write a book. Well, he wrote an encyclopedia. He just didn't write a book. He wrote the blueprint, and he gave it to us. He gave us each piece. Because he knows that each of us, if we come together, we can put it together and make one whole. And with that, I'm going to
Asante
Asante
Sana.
Sana.
All right, who's next?
I'll go next.
All right.
How y'all doing?
Good, bro.
Jumbo.
Jumbo.
Everybody tired. I'm not going to take up too much time. My presentation is on Nat Turner. Those of you that don't know, before I pull it up, about Nat Turner, he held one of the first revolts back in the 1800s. He was born in 1800 and died 1831. He was 31 years old. Actually, he was born October 2nd, 1800, and he died, was hung November 11th, 1831. And this was in Southampton County, Virginia. And he started off, as we all know, in the 1800s, it was slavery still continuing. He was also a Christian. He had preached, the masters was using him to go around to different plantations and so calming down the other slaves, and they were trying to use the Bible to do so. And in that course, he recognized that what was in the Bible was not being practiced to the people as far as loving one another and so forth and so on. So his vision was that it was a calling from God to take it upon himself to kill his enemies, end quotes, with the same weapons that was used against him. So him and a couple of few other brothers that was within his plantation went around to different plantations within Southampton County and killed about 55 to 65 slave owners. The reason why I picked Nat Turner, because it's relevant today. People may not think that we're in slavery, but because we get the little bit of freedom that we do have, it's not as blatant as it was back in his time. But there's a genocide going on as we speak through police brutality, police shootings of unarmed black men and women and children on a daily, and there's no injustice. So it's coming to a point where some action has to be taken, and in today's society, as far as a person that I also pay respects to, Makai X, he had to deploy himself in Texas, and I think that was a little bit of frustration. It wasn't really planned out, but that sort of what you have an idea, sort of what Nat Turner was about. Makai X in Texas, he shot 11 police officers in a demonstration, which his life was taken afterwards. And at this point in time, and I'm not condoning violence in any way, but I do condone the safety of the future of our babies by any means necessary. With all of that being said, we talk about Umar Wali, Martin Luther King, and Nat Turner. They all have something in common, even coming from different backgrounds, is that they put their life on the line so that our future do not have to be like it is now. So I feel that at some point we got to stop being reactionary. Always waiting for them to, do something before we react. Because they're playing chess, and their goal is to mate us. And we stay being on defense. So it's coming to a point where we have to get on offense. And that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for the sake of it. So with that being said, I'm going to close out my presentation before I go on rambling, say something crazy.
Sante. Jumbo. I'll be Brother Kasim Hetchet, the Lago. The individual. Let me see what you got, brother. You got something, brother? The sister that I'm recognizing today is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She was born Frances Lula Cress on March 18, 1935. Dr. Welsing was an African-American, Afrocentric psychiatrist. Her 1970 essay, The Cress Theory of Color Confirmation and Racism, offered her interpretation on the origins of what she described as white supremacy culture. She was born March 18, 1935 in Chicago, Illinois. She died January 2nd, 2016 in Washington, D.C. As we mentioned, one of her books is The ISIS Papers. She's involved with a movie called 500 Years Later. Her education, she went to Howard University. When I read the ISIS paper, I must admit, it was went over my head. At that time, with my studies, I was like a kid in elementary school. She's a psychiatrist that can predict and observe behavior in children. So she used this talent and took it and used it to observe and understand the behavior of white folks and white supremacy and racism. And she did this with the understanding that we fall up under a global system of white supremacy and racism. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing first got introduced to what racism really was when she attended a seminar or a meeting with Neely Fuller Jr. And she was blown away with what he was saying about racism, that it wasn't just individual things, it was actually a global system, and he could prove it. And he also showed how it worked in all areas of the 9 people's activities, which a couple of them are entertainment, education, sex, war, religion, politics, etc., etc. And Brother Neely Fuller basically gives a tool guide to all people of color who are affected by racism. How to act, conduct themselves in this world. Well, Sister Frances Cress Welsing took it a step further. She figured out, well, what's the root and origin of racism? Why are they racist? I mean, if you don't know those answers, how can you, solve the problem? Because if you don't know the real root of the issue, then whatever you come up with may not solve it. It may manifest later on or somewhere else. So she basically says that racism and white supremacy developed out of Europeans seeing that they are a minority in the world. And due to low numerical levels and the fear of genetic annihilation. Now, what do I mean when I say this? What I'm saying is, back in, 1492? Is that when Christopher Columbus set out? Back in 1492, it's a big or a notable year. But when these Europeans set out to sail, they went across all these islands. And it was a long voyage, too. And while they were in these islands, either pillaging or acting like their friends or whatever, they started mingling with the locals. So they eventually had children. So when the children came out, these Europeans noticed, hey, these children don't look like us. They look like these dark people here. So when the Europeans went back home, and on their way back home, they saw more people of color, and more people of color on this island, that island. So when they got home, they said to, I think it might have been Isabella at the time, we are a minority in the world. We're surrounded by nothing but people of color. And us stopping over here and mingling with these people of color, the babies we had weren't ours. So we've got a big problem. And the problem is, if we mingle with all these other people of color, we will cease to exist. Hence, the need for racism, to keep them away from us and us away from them. And it's, to me, if you think about it, it's an ingenious invention. Think about it. Because if they're fighting for the genetic survival, and Africans, being the darkest or having the most level of melanin to genetically annihilate them, this is why the hatred towards us is such. And this is subconsciously and consciously. So a lot of times they don't have to know why they're doing it. See, it's inherent of them to stay away from the darkness, even though they come from us. It's a crazy psychology. But she opened my eyes to a lot of concepts that I thought were far-fetched at first, but as I went on with my studies, things start to become clear to me as far as some of the games we play and some of the games Europeans play. All these things are designed to foster and to keep in the forefront of the big game that's been played, world power and domination, and to keep those with melanin, darkness, blackness, away from those who lack it. And understand that melanin is a normal thing to have in the world. The lack of melanin is abnormal. The sister passed on to the ancestral world last year, and it was a great loss to us. But it wasn't a loss all for nothing and with nothing left behind, because the sister left plenty of presentations on video. You go to YouTube, you can look the sisters up, you can get her books, and you can get with brothers and sisters like me at the Harana African Cultural Organization who are fostering some of her concepts and ideas still today, all in an effort to preserve us and to build us to a place where we once was. As she would say, and Brother Neely Fuller, that they're in the job of doing away with evil and putting justice in the place of that. And when they started using that term, justice, it reminded me of the spiritual walk that I'm in with Maya, where truth, justice, and righteousness is when things is okay. And that's what the concept of Ma'at is all about, bringing that order back to the world and the universe. So I just want to give big props to the sister in the ancestral realm for her work that she's put in for us and for future generations. Her memory and spirit and work will not die. They live on through me and everyone else. And with that, I say Ashe.
Ashe.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. Once again, I haven't done anything like this in over 30 years, so bear with me. A little nervous right now. I basically just wrote down some information. The person that I chose was Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. She is the first Black woman president of Liberia, elected in 2006, and still currently the president as of today. It's been 12 years. Ellen Sirleaf has made leaps and bounds in improving the role of women in aspects of Liberian study, of the Liberian society. She was elected in 2006, but has had no family connection in politics to allow for an easy rise to power. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is the first Black woman to win a presidential election in Africa. Since elected to lead an African nation, Liberia has made great progress in rebuilding its infrastructure, opening schools, providing health care and other social services. Despite being a woman and everything lined up against her, such as the traditional cultural beliefs about the role of women in power and in her society, and even having the American government write off her candidacy, she still succeeded in her presidential election. The people of Liberia wanted better for their children and their future, and for the past 12 years, she has utilized her position to make sure that happens. That's all I have.
Asante.
Okay. It's on you, Brother Sabaka.
I'm just gonna go over what I got now.
Literally.
Hey, can I use her I wanna play that video. August 20th. But this is special to me. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna pass it around. My first one will be on Mr. Gregory.
Dick Gregory.
On Dick Gregory. He passed on the 19th. Richard Claxton Gregory, better known as Dick Gregory, was born October 12, 1932 in St. Louis, Missouri. He was an Afro-American community and civil rights activist whose social satire changed the way white Americans perceived African American comedians since he first performed in public. It's important to note that no bibliography of Gregory will be complete without mentioning that his family and his beloved wife. Dick Gregory had 10 kids who have all become highly respected members of the national community in a variety of fields. They are Michelle, Lynn, Pamela, Paula, Stephanie, Gregory, Christian, Miss, Ayana, and Johans. Johans is an actor. The Gregorys had one child who died at birth. They have shared 49 years of historic monuments, moments, selfless dedication, and tremendous love. I printed out some of these quotes, which I thought were powerful. This is a person that I thought had something to say. And one of his famous ones is, "Love is man's natural endowment, but he does not know how to use it. He refuses to recognize the power of love because of his love of power." Dick Gregory entered the national comedy scene in 1961 in Chicago, Playboy Club, owned by the renowned Hugh Hefner. From an early age, Gregory demonstrated a strong sense of social justice. While a student at Sumner High School in St. Louis, he led a march protesting segregated schools. Later, inspired by the work of leaders such as Dr. Martin Luther King and organizations such as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the SNCC, Gregory took part in the civil rights movement and used his celebrity status to draw attention to such issues as segregation and disfranchisement. When local Mississippi government stopped distributing federal food supplies to poor blacks in areas where SNCC was encouraging voter registration, Gregory chartered a plane to bring in several tons of food. He participated in SNCC's voter registration drives and sit-ins to protest segregation, most notably at a restaurant franchise in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. Only later did Gregory disclose that he held stock in the chain. Gregory wrote books such as The Murder of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1971 with Mark Lane, who was finally published in the best-selling 1966 book Rush to Judgment. Gregory credited with reversing the nation's opinion on who assassinated the president and the facts which contradicted the official government version contained in Warren Report. Lane's book contained answers and facts, which Gregory has espoused in numerous lectures. That's the book. After spending a week hospitalized in Washington, D.C. with a bacterial infection, Baba Dick Gregory passed on at the hospital in D.C. on August 19, 2017. The cause was heart failure. This is the end of this one. Another one of his good quotes was, it was a joke that he said, I watched it on YouTube, but it's a meme of it. It's just as a prisoner was being strapped into an electric chair, the priest said, "Son, is there anything I can do for you?" The prisoner said, "Yeah. When they pull the switch, hold my hand."
I heard that.
trying to pull it up on mine and it has some kind of download error. Can I pull up my email? You got Outlook? I had a video. It's crazy that y'all mentioned COINTELPRO, because I had a video. The video starts explaining that program, and it was showing the evidence that they was gathering against Huey P. Newton. Yeah. 1942. Dr. Huey Newton attended the University of California, Santa Cruz, and studied law, attaining his bachelor's degree and PhD. While Newton attended Merritt College in California, Newton and his comrade, Chairman Bobby Seale, organized the Black Panther for self-defense. Okay, this is the video. Can everybody hear that?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stop at here. I'm gonna drag it out.
Originally wanted to protect local residents from police brutality. As the party evolved, its goals expanded. The group called for nationwide changes meant to combat racial inequality in the United States. By the late 1960s, the organization had over 2,000 members. Critics of the party saw the organization as a racist hate group, while supporters agreed with its push for equality, if not its violent methods. The federal government considered the Panthers terrorists. In the FBI's estimation, the Black Panther Party was an extremist group that advocated the use of violence and guerrilla tactics to overthrow the U.S. government. Neutralizing the Panthers and other political dissidents became a #1 priority for the FBI. But how far would the government go to prevent the spread of subversive elements? Will they, in fact, break the law? Here's where it gets crazy. Yes, in 1956, the FBI formed a secret program called COINTELPRO to combat subversive political organizations. This series of secret operations focused on several major groups: communists, socialists, the Ku Klux Klan, black nationalists, and others. The Panther Party was not originally one of the FBI targets, but by 1968, J. Edgar Hoover considered them the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. By 1969, the Panthers were one of COINTELPRO's primary targets, and the FBI attempted to weaken the group through a number of means. The FBI was primarily concerned that this group might unify with other similar organizations. To prevent this, the FBI engaged in numerous acts of widespread surveillance, wiretapping, mail fraud, extortion, and more. The COINTELPRO operations weren't public until 1971, meaning that for decades these programs functioned without public scrutiny and with virtually no congressional oversight. In 1976, the Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations, better known as the Church Committee, found that the FBI had violated the law in several COINTELPRO operations. While the stated aim of COINTELPRO was to prevent violence, some of the FBI's actions during this time arguably promoted violence between the Black Panthers and rival organizations such as the United Slaves and the Blackstone Rangers. The FBI also worked to prevent prominent party members such as Fred Hampton or Bobby Seale from making public appearances. According to Noam Chomsky, COINTELPRO eventually expanded to include political assassinations. Is there any truth to this claim? To answer this question, we must examine the death of Fred Hampton, who died during an FBI and Chicago police force raid on December 4th, 1969. Hampton had a reputation as a remarkable political organizer, and he had the diplomatic skills necessary to unify rival black nationalist movements. Supporters of the Panther Party claimed that Hampton was assassinated and that the government feared Hampton could become a visible leader unifying the Black Power movement. To this day, the FBI, the Justice Department, and the Chicago Police Force reject any claims of political skullduggery, maintaining that the raid was conducted correctly. In 1971, an activist group called the Citizens Commission to investigate the FBI stole COINTELPRO documents from a field office in Pennsylvania, exposing the project to public scrutiny. In April of the same year, the FBI terminated COINTELPRO, yet numerous critics of the U.S. government believe that the strategies used in COINTELPRO operations are still in use today. Which strategies, and against whom? For now, that seems to be the stuff they don't want you to know.
What saddens me the most about this report is it wasn't the FBI that killed. It was one of us. On August 22nd, 1989, Dr. Newton fatally shot on Center Street in Lower Bottoms neighborhood of West Oakland by a supposed 24-year-old black guerrilla family member. His last words to his killer before being shot twice in the head were, "You can kill my body, you should take my life, but you can never kill my soul. My soul will live forever." Newton's alleged killer, Tyrone Robinson, was convicted of the murder in 1991 and sentenced to up to 32 years to life in prison. Some of his favorite quotes was, which I'm finna frame this. I'm finna print on a color and frame it, pass it around. He said, "By surrendering my life to the revolution, I found it, eternal life."
I say.
Let's say.
Two more were, if you stop struggling, then you stop life. And my fear was not of death itself, but a death without meaning.
That's right.
So, I said,
Asante Sana.
Last but not least, let's give it up, Brother Nyame.
Asante.
Sikitu.
I did my presentation on Brother Shockwave Lumumba. Shockwave Lumumba, I didn't know much about him a few years ago, but I felt like I should have. I'm from Mississippi, from Clarksdale, Mississippi. And Shockwave Lumumba spent a lot of time in Mississippi. I'm gonna go ahead and read off his bio. It says Shockwave Lumumba was presented to this world August 2nd, 1947 in Detroit, Michigan. He was given the name Edwin Finley Taliaferro. And he was the second of 8 children born to Lucien and Priscilla Taliaferro. His father was from Kansas and his mother was from Alabama, but both had moved to Detroit during what was known as the 20th century Great Migration. When Detroit was, the northern city, so it wasn't really desegregated, but after segregation, actually it was during Jim Crow, but there was a lot of jobs opened up in Detroit, so thousands and thousands of our people moved up from different states to Detroit, where they had to fight for whatever jobs they could get. So it was part of that which led to the creation of a lot of people, including Shockwave Lumumba. It is stated that Shockwave was also partially Cherokee, but I couldn't find exactly what the reason was for that to be stated. He grew up in Detroit and attended Catholic schools. He graduated from St. Teresa High School, where he was the captain of the football team, as well as the president of the student council. Now his mother, Priscilla, through African worldview, we're taught that our mothers are our first teachers. From the womb, life begins way before you're born. Your mother carries you around for months. You feel everything that she feels. You're nurtured off of her through your umbilical cord, but also through her spirit. And it just stood out to me that his mother's credited with teaching him the importance of political activism and civil rights, as they used to stand on corners in Detroit and raise funds for the student
Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. It didn't stand out to me. The name didn't ring a bell, but Kwame Ture was a major part of that organization. Stokely Carmichael, some people know him by. Mama. So at the age of 20, on April the 5th, 1968, the day after Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, Shockwave took part in a protest at Western Michigan University, where the protesters occupied certain school facilities and had many demands that they made, including such as they wanted the Caucasians to admit that they was a murderous race of people. You know, they also didn't want anyone to retaliate against them after the protest as far as academics go or putting the police on them. And having African American related curriculums added to the school as well as also facilities, places of studies. All of the demands were met. All the demands were met. The dean of the university came out and made a statement to something to the effects that Caucasian race were a bunch of murderers and racists, Caucasians. So, you know, they made some moves in college. Shockwave graduated from Kalamazoo College in 1969, the following year, and he majored in political science. He advocated for African American studies in institutions of higher education around the Midwest. In 1969, he joined the Republic of New Africa. And that's when I learned about shockwave movement, was when I was studying the RNA. If you're not familiar with the RNA, this is in the 1960s. They had a conference, I think it was in Detroit, of our people came together and they laid out plans for taking over a vast portion of the United States. Most of the southern states of the United States, like Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, were the main states, and I think South Carolina too. There was a strip through there. They laid out plans to where they wanted those states for us as an independent country. They had a Declaration of Independence that they filed. They filed the Constitution with their laws as well. It was like 500 people attended the council, the conference, but like 100 people actually signed the document. But another thing about the RNA, you know, they had doctors, they had people who are already in city councils, different levels within the United States government advocating for this. But they were also ready to take it to guerrilla warfare if they needed to. They was trained, they was ready to go. They had militia put together and everything for the RNA. And their flag was very similar to this flag. But their flag colors, and I got it in here, it was red, black, and green, but the colors were just switched around. It had the green on the top, the red in the middle, very thin, and the black at the bottom. So it was an African liberation movement for our people here on the land. We have ancestors that's been buried here for centuries. So when they tell us to go back to Africa, or because you're Pan-African, they think that the end game is for all of us to move back to Africa. They're mistaken, because a lot of us have our history invested in this land as well. And Africa, in my personal opinion, is wherever Africans are. And the one thing they don't want us to do is to stay here and build an Africa here, which I think is where we're headed towards anyway. Okay, get back to my report. Chokwe changed his name when he joined the RNA. He changed his name to Chokwe after the Chokwe people of the Congo. And in honor of Patrice Lumumba, who had just been previously assassinated by the Belgian government.
CIA?
Well, the CIA had a hand in it, but it was Belgian intelligence. There was intelligence officers bragging about the things that they did to him on the plane. This was an African head of state who just vanished, never to be seen again. But you know, they got them bragging about how they still got souvenirs of his teeth and how he screamed and all that when they would torture him before they killed him on a plane. But the world didn't do anything about it. it was real hush-hush. You know, the head of an African state, which was part of the United Nations at the time, was assassinated, and all the other nations seemed to turn their backs to it. It caused a lot of uproar with our people here. Hence, Shockwave carried on the name Lumumba. He was elected the second vice president of the RNA, and the members decided to move the headquarters of the RNA to Hinds County, Mississippi, which is part of the reason why he ended up moving to Mississippi, deep down in the heart of the Delta, which would have been in the heart of the land that they claimed to be ours, which is where they would have moved the nation's capital to. And it was dedicated on the farm March 28th of 1971. He was appointed the Minister of Justice by the President of the Republic of New Africa. Chokwe finished law school in 1975, graduating valedictorian of his school. This was where he created I lost it. It's cut off. But he worked as a public defender in the state's public defender's office. He was a staff attorney, and he represented many prisoners, 16 prisoners involved in a riot in Illinois. They was all facing murder charges, and he ended up defending them and getting them all took off, got the charges dropped against them. He also represented Sister Fulani Suni Ali in a Brinks robbery case. I actually have a picture of them together when he did the representation related to that. He represented a lot of people. Geronimo Pratt. He also worked on the case with Tupac Shakur at one point. He was involved in his defense case too. And he was always rebellious. You know, he had these positions where he was contracted with the government, but he was reprimanded a lot because he would speak out too much. At one point, he was held in contempt. He spent 3 days in jail related to the outbursts. He also had his law license revoked for 6 months as well, but eventually it was reinstated. Now, he was elected to the Jackson Ward 2 City Council seat with the help of the Malcolm X grassroots movement, which he helped founded. He also gained support from the Mississippi Disaster Relief Coalition and other community activists. The New African Peoples Organization, and they co-sponsored the Washington D.C. Occupy the Justice Department movement. He was elected the mayor of Jackson, Mississippi. He ran on a Democratic ticket, and by the evening of May 7, 2013, it was announced that Lumumba had forced the incumbent in a runoff election, so he forced a victory. And the guy was soundly defeated. Lumumba had led in at least 5 or 7 different wars based on his principles and his political stance as far as how he was going to help Jackson. Now, I looked on a map because the brothers with the Moorish American movement, they have their way that they would like to basically overcome the system. They do it from working with the system, but from a Moorish American point of view. They had a debate with this brother, a Kemetic, a Nile Valley spiritualist brother, goes by Brother Reggie. They had a debate about their ideas of what plans that they were going to lay out. And one of the plans Reggie had was to form a city-state by taking over a major black majority city, infiltrating its government, and then turning this major city into a new nation, a city-state, a nation-state within the city. That was one of his plans. And he said that people should look up the cities that were the most populous of our people with the highest percentage. Jackson, Mississippi, for cities that have over 100,000 population, Jackson, Mississippi is the highest percentage of our people in the United States. It's over 80-something% of our people. And so it just intrigued me that that was also the city that Shockwave Lumumba was mayor of. And he'd only raised $69,000 for his campaign. But he went up against a guy who was favored by the Caucasians. He was backed by a lot of the businesses, which were ran by the Caucasians. And he had 5 times more money raised than Chokwe Lumumba had, and Chokwe still whooped him in 5 of 7 precincts. So if you look at the debates on it was just a few years ago. You look at the debates online, Chokwe slapping this dude around. Like, he's verbally slapping this guy around every remark this guy makes, and he does it so charismatically. You couldn't help but look at the brother and say, I'm going with him, you know? But just to wrap it up, let me see. Chokwe Lumumba passed away February 25th, 2014 at the age of 66. And he said he died at St. Dominican Hospital in Jackson, Mississippi. And the cause of his death wasn't immediately clear because the county coroner, refused to do an autopsy on him. And then you had the county advisor and other people saying on television that he was murdered. He was assassinated. And officially he died of heart failure. It reminds me, Brother Dick Gregory just passed away last weekend. He went in there for bacterial infection. And the people who last spent their time with Baba Dick Gregory said that in the days before he passed away, he was walking around feeling good, had more pep in his step. They were talking about what he was going to do when he got out. And then he took a sudden turn for the worse, and that was the end. And this brother went in there for a cold. And they both, the cause of death was heart failure for both of them. So, but his legacy lives on through his son, Chokwe Anta Lumumba, who was a lawyer. He was a lawyer and a partner in Chokwe Lumumba's practice. And after first losing to Tony Yarber in a special runoff election, he finally defeated him in a rematch earlier this year, just a few months earlier. And he is now the current mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, where his father was previous mayor. So the legacy still lives on to this day. The fight is still going on with our brothers. And that's my presentation.
Asante Sana.
Asante Sana. How you doing, brother?